Thank you for a very heartfelt talk. Are there any questions? Yes.
So in Todd's talk, it's that wanting something to change. He talked about and that desire. But sometimes, things do need to change. So what is that balance between the desire to change but also accepting things as they are?
Right now, do you have to go to the bathroom?
No, I already did.
And at one point you had to go to the bathroom. And then you did. And now you don't. And then later you will. And so on and so forth. Okay? So let's not overthink things. All right? Sometimes it's really clear what action needs to be taken. And sometimes it's clear that action needs to be taken. Now notice I didn't say that I want things to change. Sometimes it's clear that action needs to be taken. And sometimes when that happens, we immediately know what the action is. And sometimes we don't know what the action is. And sometimes we think that action need not be taken when in fact it really needs to be taken. Like when you have a slow leak in your plumbing or something and you have no idea. And then years later, this actually happened to me and Stan, years later, somebody's working on your flooring and they say, oh, look at all this black mold, So yeah, so it's not desire. Desire isn't always a problem. No one thing is ever a problem. It's how do you use it, right? But when we get stuck in this has to change, this has to change, this has to change, but we have no idea how to change it, then don't know is very effective. Because otherwise our minds spin. We're just all the time thinking of this thing that we don't know what to do about. But if you can just step back and just don't know allows you to see clearly. But yeah, when things have to change, they have to change. No, they don't have to change, they don't have to change. And a lot of times we don't know. So thank you for your question. Yes?
So Todd brought up Amitabha. Would you talk a little bit about the role or function of kind of some of these cosmic...
Okay, so the question is...
in terms of our practice.
Right, so Todd mentioned Amida Buddha, Amitabha in Korean. And so the question was raised, he's not the only Buddha, Bodhisattva rather, that, no, he's a Buddha. He's not the only Buddha, and also there's a bunch of Bodhisattvas floating around.
There's Naginis.
Pardon?
The Naginis, isn't that something?
We're not going to talk about them.
Okay, they're in my head.
The Naginis, whoever they are. Yeah, they're all, the Mahayana pantheon is huge. But there are certain figures, like, Amida Buddha is the Buddha that is the center of Pure Land Buddhism. And notice I didn't say is worshipped in, I said is the center of Pure Land Buddhism. Shakyamuni Buddha is the historical Buddha, the guy in gold up, always does it, the guy in gold up there, who supposedly lived in India about, 2,600 years ago or something like that, in what is now northern India. And he lies behind all of the Buddhist sects, whatever you want to call them. There's the guy in the morning, Vairocana Buddha, who actually is the cosmic Buddha in the sense that Vairocana's substance permeates the universe. sort of the closest there is to the notion of God in the, in the Middle Eastern, the Abrahamic religions, except that none of these Buddhas create things. They don't say, let there be light or anything like that. And they don't run around telling people what to do, so they're not active in that way. And so go forth to Egypt or anything like that. So, so those are just three of many, 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 many Buddhas. And then we have the various bodhisattvas, like Kwanseum Bosal, the bodhisattva of compassion, and Jijang Bosal, otherwise known as Kichagarbha, who is a special, sort of special focus on people in transition, dead people, babies, firefighters for some reason, travelers, and so on, pregnant women. And you have a whole lot of, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of bodhisattvas. And so the question is, what do they play in our practice? Because looking around the room, everyone here comes from European culture, European American culture. And so we all grew up, and on screen that's true also. We all grew up in different concepts of divinity and of sort of supernatural, whatever you call it. And so there's a tendency to try to fit these beings into that frame. In fact, one of the early Jesuit missionaries in either China or Japan translated Vairocana as God. Because, anyway. But it's a very different, and it's different in different forms of Buddhism also. As I said, like Pure Land Buddhism really focuses on Amida Buddha. And in our morning bell chant, we chant to Amida Buddha 15 times, Namo Amitabha, okay? Which should get us a free pass into the Pure Land, the Western Pure Land. And I should say, every Buddha comes, when you become a Buddha, you get a Pure Land. Mormons actually have something like this, where you reach different stages, and when you reach the highest stage, you have like a little universe that you're kind of in charge of, sort of like that. So the Buddhas are kind of like that also. And the Western Pure Land is not west of anything. It's west of this universe. It's not like if you keep going west, you'll hit it. It's west of this universe. So, but as Todd said in his talk, when you're chanting when you're invoking these Buddhas or these bodhisattvas, like we do a lot of chanting to Kuan Yin, Kwanseum Bosal, the bodhisattva of compassion. All Zen practices do a lot of Kwanseum Bosal stuff, or Kuan Yin, or Kanon in Japanese, or Kuan, what you're really doing is, it's like there's some kind of cosmic principle, and you're really putting your life in that direction, and you're really becoming one. It's like you're invoking something, but it's not separate from you. It's actually a part of you. So you're invoking something that seems external, but you're uniting with it. So when we chant Kwanseum Bosal, which we do at the start of Sunday practice and at the start of Wednesday practice, we chant to Kwanseum Bosal. It's not that, and we read a list of names, and I forgot to ask if there were any names this morning besides the ones I read, my apologies. We chant for people, for individual people. But it's not that we're chanting, asking for Kwanseum Bosal to intercede, to come down from wherever she is. She's usually seen as a she. To come down from wherever she is and fix that cancer. That's not what we're asking her to do. So what we're really doing is we're focusing our energies on those people that we're chanting for. And we don't have a particular request, except maybe for mental and spiritual ease. That's the most you could ask for. And it's not going to come about by some intervention from outside. So this chanting is just like uniting with these people that we're chanting for. And the same when we chant also Jijang Bosal, Ksitagarbha. It's a great name, it means earth womb, but is always perceived of as male. When we're chanting to Ksitagarbha, we're, for dead people, again, it's just this kind of coming together. We're coming together in some way that maybe does or doesn't make logical sense depending on your opinion of rebirth. But again, it's a way of focusing energy and creating this community. So both of those chants, it's about focusing energy, creating community. And, sometimes when we're really confused, and, I've also done what Todd said, sometimes when you're really confused, he didn't put it this way, but you just give it up to Amida Buddha or give it up to Kwanzaa Bosal. Just, take this burden, please. And sometimes it lifts. Now, it's not like, there they are, Jijang Bosal over here, Kwanzaa Bosal here. Oh, I'll take that. And they, like you throw the basketball, they pick up the basketball, they put it in a little basketball basket or something. It's not like that. But somehow it's like it's a way of recognizing that you can't fix this by yourself. And then, so you just sort of give it to the universe, but you're giving a little name to it, Kwanzaa Bosal, Amida Buddha, whatever. You're just doing this, just allowing it to ease, to lift up from as a burden. Allow your don't know mind to appear. So, human beings were psychologically so, you could say complex or you could say fucked up. We are. And these are techniques to help us clear our minds. And we personify them. We personify these sort of principles like compassion and so on. We personify these principles, we give them names, we give them stories, Like there's stories about the origins of Ksitagarbha, there's stories about the origins of Kwanzaa Bosal. Shakyamuni Buddha, big story about him, long story about his life. So we have all these stories that we tell, and it's just ways of getting us on the right track, of not being so obsessed by this small self that just takes over all the time, just takes over our life, and to just kind of, just open. There's a book that Todd told me about years ago by a Japanese teacher, Uchiyama, and it has this wonderful title, Opening the Hand of Thought. And for years I didn't understand what that title meant. But that's, you're holding this stuff so tightly, just open it up. Just open it up. And maybe it'll turn into butterflies and just fly away. Or maybe you open up and you say, oh, look at all those worms. Actually, worms are cool, They make soil, allow us to grow vegetables. But yeah, okay. So you just open this hand of thought. So that's what the function that these take on. And all of the, the rituals around them, the chanting to them. In Asia, a lot of people have altars and they, attend to the altars every day. This is all basically because human beings are fucked up. And how do we unfuck ourselves? So thank you very much for your question. Are there any other questions?
Do you find that over time, suppose one does get more clarity and purpose?
So the question is, do we find that over time we get more clarity and purpose?
Does that affect your expectations of others, or
Does that affect our expectations of others?
Can there be conflict when, it becomes even more difficult to relate to where they're coming from if they're not?
Can there be conflict and it becomes even more difficult? That's about 5 questions.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
It was really about the last question.
Yeah, so, so there's this idea of practice as self-improvement, and it's not self-improvement, because it's giving up the notion of self as the sort of driver of our car. It's giving up the notion of self as the thing that motivates us in everything we do. So it's not about self-improvement. You naturally, any form of meditation, naturally, body systems kind of slow down, your breath becomes slower and deeper, your heart rate slows, et cetera, et cetera. There are all these health benefits. Also, what most people find when they start practicing is that they do feel more relaxed afterwards. Like you're just coming out of a really nice sleep. Although I hope you're not asleep when you're meditating, but yes, it's like coming out of if we've never meditated before, it's just such a treat. And I remember for my first several years, it's like I was just wanting to grab you must meditate, it's so wonderful. But then what happens after a while, as you practice, is karma starts coming up, and then it's not so pleasant. And, your heart rate may be slower and your breathing may be deeper, but you see all the shit you've done in your life. You see all the pain you've experienced from other people and other situations. This stuff comes up. And then the question is, what do you do with it? So Zen is also not psychotherapy, and that's not putting psychotherapy down. I'm a big fan of it, but psychotherapy does something else. What Zen does is you have this practice, and this shit comes up, and you don't engage with it. Usually we engage with it. I mean, you will engage with it, everybody does, but then you say, whoa, I'm engaging with it, stop it, And it's not like you push it away, because it's still there, but it's sort of this attitude, go sit in a corner for a while, and you keep bringing your mind back to your practice, bring your mind back to your practice, bring your mind back to your practice, over and over, bring your mind back to your practice. And then all this stuff loses its hold on you. Maybe you did something terrible, and you're just going around in this fog of guilt and shame. And then, you did something terrible. You did it. It happened. But the guilt and the shame doesn't have to be there. How do you make amends is a different issue than going around saying, I'm such a horrible person because I did this. It's like, okay, I did this. How do I fix it? What do I do with the rest of my life to atone for it? Not atone in the sense of I'm so guilty, but make myself better. Or maybe something horrible happened to you, something that was just really, maybe you were the equivalent of people who are in Gaza right now. They go from place to place to place. Everywhere they go, they're bombed. Their kids are dead, and everything like that is happening. And you have to be in some kind of state of shock. I mean, you're functioning, you're moving around, but there has to be some kind of great shock there. So how do you deal with that? Do you become, like some kind of jihadist out to kill as many Israelis as possible? Or do you use that to open your heart? And how do you not have it take over your life where that becomes your identity? This happened to me. I had an uncle by marriage, because my family on both sides was in this country for several generations, but my one of my aunts married a man whose teenage years were spent in Auschwitz, actually one of the labor camps associated with Auschwitz. And he was very interesting because he was one of the least burdened people I'd ever met. I mean, you know, Todd was talking about how he had gone through hell. The years when he was supposed to be hanging out with, making out with people and drinking beer illegally and driving fast with his friends. You know, he was in a labor camp not having any food or sleep, and people were dying all around him. And he had transformed that experience to being one of the most open people that I've ever known, you know. I mean, I was raised in a good little Zionist family. He was like, he could see why the Palestinians were not happy. He was the only one in the family like that, because he'd been through it and he could use that to take in the world. He gave a lot of money to a Catholic hospital because they'd taken good care of somebody he loved. You know, he didn't have a small mind. He had a wide, wide mind. And he didn't get upset, you know, when the kids were acting up. He was casual, he was fine. So how do you transform these experiences? And it's non-trivial. And then you asked about in your life, you know, judging others. Yeah, sometimes people, yeah, this person really should practice. You don't know that.
As you attain that mindset, which I believe is absolutely possible and
Yeah.
what's natural,
Yeah.
does external individuals' sense of self become more offensive?
So your question is, do other people's sense of self become more offensive? If your mind is really open, then it's kind. Then you're not offended. And also don't feel superior, because you don't know what their life has been. You don't know what you would be if you had lived that life. You know, it's one thing for me to talk about my uncle, who really was an extraordinary man. You know, Stan knew him, and he can tell you he was an extraordinary man. Not special. I mean, he, you know, just had his job and his kids and stuff, but extraordinary human being. And then, you know, his brother had gone through the same thing, was not like that at all. So don't judge others. That's really important. Don't judge them. Just everyone has their path. Everyone has their way. You know, it's not a path in the sense that I know I'm going to New York. You know, it's not like that. Just everyone has their life. And don't ever judge anyone's life, because you don't know. Yeah. And yes, sure, I mean, everyone goes through a stage where you feel superior because you practice, you know, but you're not superior, right?
Yeah, I didn't think like that. Suppose it just seems more trivial. It could not be, you know, looking down on them. It can be disappointed for them, feeling for them, because you see them suffering through something that maybe they don't need to suffer through.
Yeah, so
There's all these influences.
so yeah, you're asking about looking down on people, feeling for them because they're suffering, and they don't really have to suffer. Wait till it happens to you.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no one who's exempt from suffering.
Right.
You know. And also the notion, I mean, sure, everybody, whether you're practicing or not, everybody has friends who you want to just shake them and say, stop it! You know, stop this obsession you got. Everyone has that, you know, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help. So yeah, so just open, really open. And that's, you know, we're always saying don't know. And don't know allows you to be open. Instead of, I know what this person's like, I know what this person needs. No, you don't know. You really don't know. So just be open.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, we are way out of time. So, time to stop.